Stokes, he gives me this look. He doesn't even say anything, right? He just gives me this look. While we're taking fire, just after that grenade went off, with his radio operator, he runs into the fight right in front of me. And we all see our lieutenant doing this, and so we all get up and just follow him into the fight. My name is Markos. I served from 99 to 2003 with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, and I was a corporal NCO when I got out. I'm from a little town in Central California called Monte Sereno. I had great parents. They did the best they could, you know. Loving parents, I've no complaints with that regard. The only thing that was different about my childhood is my mom was like a type 1 diabetic. So from the time, you know, before I could even speak, I was administering care to her, you know, like insulin and stuff, because this was back during the late 80s, early 90s. There wasn't the advanced like medical care that we have now. And what that essentially did is I had these long periods of, you know, just having a regular family life with both my parents, punctuated by really, really intense sequences of terror, right? Because when she would have every one of these attacks, she would almost die. And so I remember as a teen dialing for paramedics and then hanging up the phone and dialing for pizza delivery. And so they'd be wheeling out my mom on the stretcher and the pizza delivery guy would be showing up. That's how commonplace these type of events became. And looking back at it now, it was sort of like, you know, that's kind of like how combat is, you know, like these long periods of boredom, nothing happens, punctuated by intense sequences of like terror. Just that comparison is really striking to me now. And I also got involved, like when I was about 14, 15, a teenager, I got involved with some kind of bad individuals, and my life started taking a turn for the worst. You know, I started drinking a lot, hanging out with a bad crowd. I didn't graduate high school. I got my GED. My parents got divorced when I was about 17, and I needed to get out of there because my life was heading in a bad direction, and I knew it. I mean, even being that young, I knew I had to go. It's kind of a combination of things that inspired my choice to get into the Marine Corps. I had been raised on a steady diet of action movies when I was really young. So, you know, like Aliens is one of my favorite movies, Commando, you know, all the classic action, you know, from that era. That's number one. Number two is I needed to do something, right? As a young kid, I had never accomplished anything. I didn't even graduate high school at the time. And so I knew, I mean, I had this need that I wanted to make a difference somehow. I also wanted to like test myself in kind of a dangerous environment like combat. I wanted to see how I would react. You know, I think a lot of guys, when you're younger, you see all these movies about it, you hear a lot of older aged individuals talking about it, so you want to see what that is for yourself. You know, during that time as a young teenager, it's an age of trying to experience things. And so I wanted to experience something like that. I knew the Marines, at least because of their marketing material, would be the first ones in. Like, if you wanted to go to combat, it would be the Marines. And so I chose the Marines, 0331. I went into the recruiting office and I told the recruiter, I want to be in the infantry. And the recruiter said, well, are you sure? Let's have you take the ASVAB first and then make a decision. So I took the ASVAB and he says, your scores are good enough, you don't have to be in the infantry. Because the recruiter knew, right? Recruiters, a lot of them are career Marines. So he tried to convince me to do something else. And I said, no, you know, I wanted infantry, I want to blow shit up. I want to fire the big guns. And of course, I was 17 at the time. I had no fucking idea what I was getting into. But that's what I told him. And he said, okay, well, I'll make it guaranteed 0331 machine gunner on your contract. And that's what I got. So when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, my mom had a consistent 24-hour care in the hospital. She was well taken care of, and all of her medical conditions were handled by the staff. So I felt, at least when I signed up, that she'd be okay if I had gone and went ahead and enlisted like I'd planned to. I went to MCRD in San Diego. We rolled in, and I don't remember the time. I think it was really early in the morning. I think it was around 2 or 3 in the morning when our bus got there. I remember already being sort of disoriented. And as soon as the drill instructor got on the bus, it became completely real. It became a real situation. This was really happening. And I realized immediately that I had no idea what I was getting into. And I knew, like, at the back of my head, I said, this is something that I'm going to accomplish. I'm going to do this all the way until the end. And I'm going to make sure that it's something that I actually complete. Boot camp for me was extremely difficult. And the recruiter tried to get me to go to field days. He tried to get me to go running, do some PT. But I had gone from being, I was smoking, I was drinking, I hadn't run 3 miles since football, which had been like 3 or 4 years before. I was not ready. I was not ready for boot camp physically. And I was also kind of not ready for boot camp mentally either. But I did it anyway. It was infinitely harder because I hadn't prepared myself for what I was really actually going to be doing. What I really remember about boot camp is what they teach you, is what I learned there is something that I didn't and I couldn't have gotten anywhere else, right? It's the first time as a younger person that you learn like discipline, that you learn like personal accountability. No other thing could teach you that besides something like boot camp in the way that it does. So doing things by the numbers, eating by the numbers, getting dressed by the numbers, all that kind of thing. It teaches you to accomplish the mission quickly. That's something that I needed as like a 17-year-old kid. I mean, there were tears on the Reaper. The Reaper, so you go through the Crucible, it's this long ending field exercise of boot camp. You don't eat a lot of food. Final crowning thing of the Crucible is a hike up the Reaper, which is a hill, at least at Camp Pendleton, that's the Crucible there. They hand you your EGA and they call you a Marine for the first time. And like I said, it was the first time in my life that I had accomplished something really significant. It was an amazing experience for me. It kind of determined how the rest of my life would go, And so all the subsequent things that I would do, it's becoming a lawyer, graduating, undergrad with honors, all that kind of stuff. It was all based on the concepts that I learned in boot camp and in the Marine Corps. I credit that with everything that happened afterwards. So school infantry was good to go. It was like boot camp, but not really, because you're still kind of regimented, but you're still in that kind of environment, but it's lessened a little bit. One thing that happened when I went to SOI is we had a big drop of Marines from the East Coast. And one of the Marines, I'll call him PFC Smith. We'll call him PFC Smith. So I had a huge problem with this guy, and I don't remember how it started, but we were constantly at each other. We were talking shit to each other. I would call him some names, he'd call me some names. I mean, I kind of knew that eventually, me and him, we were going to get into it, So I tried to stay away from him because I didn't want to get, demoted. I didn't want anything fucking bad to happen because I was just starting my career in the military. So we go to this gun range for the 50 cal. I'm shooting the 50 cal, and as I'm shooting it, a like little fragment. At the time, I thought the buffer spring on the back of the M2 had come out and hit me in the face. And looking back on it, I don't think that was really possible. I think what likely happened is as I was shooting at the range, a little fragment came off with a target and hit me in the face. And anyway, however it happened, I got a little cut on my lip, and I went and the doc fixed it. And this will come into play later. This will be relevant later. So I went to the doc fixed it, everything is fine. So we go back to the squad bay at SOI, and Smith is inside of the bathroom, like at a sink or something, and I'm walking by him, and he says something to me, and it was just like the last straw, right? I'd just been injured at the range. I had a long day. It was the end of it. I said, "What, motherfucker?" And he turns around, and I just decked him right in the face. And he said, "Fuck you." And so we just start going at it. and I hit him like 5 or 6 times, and he hits me the same amount, and eventually a bunch of guys come and like split us up, right? Okay. The unfortunate truth about this thing is that it's in the middle of the fucking squad bay, and everybody knows about it. And so immediately, I believe it was a gunny, calls us up, and everybody is in a half circle around the gunny when me and Mr. Smith walk in front of him. And what had happened is Mr. Smith hit me a few times, and he really didn't hit me that hard, but I had that pre-existing cut on my lip. So it split it open, and I got that cut that day, and so my whole uniform was covered with blood. And he had my blood on him because, I mean, the cut had gotten everywhere, and it wasn't really a big deal. I didn't need stitches or anything like that. It just looked bad, right? And so me and Smith are standing tall in front of the gunny and the other NCOs at SOI, and all the other Marines are in there in the half circle, and the gunny's like, "What happened, PFC?" And I said, "I don't remember, gunny. I don't remember." And then he looks over at Smith. He says, "Smith, do you remember?" And Smith says, "I don't remember, gunny." And he said, "Well, I guess I don't remember either. And if it happens again, then maybe we'll all remember." And he turns around, and that was it. And I was fucking shocked. Because if that had happened, I don't know how things are in the Marine Corps now, but shit like that used to happen, and that was it. I didn't hear about it ever again. You know, there was no charges. I wasn't demoted. Nothing happened. And then when we get dropped to the fleet, I show up at 3-4. Those NCOs, my NCOs, had heard about the fact that me and Mr. Smith have a problem. So take a wild guess at who they put as my roommate for the first fucking year that I'm in 3-4. He was my roommate for a year while I was at my unit, my first unit. We never fought again. You know, that was kind of the end of it. You know, I hit him, he hit me. You know, we took it as far as it could go. That's it. Neither one of us wanted to get kicked out of the military. And so we're like, all right, we're just gonna stop doing this. From SOI, I got assigned to 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, attached to the 7th Infantry Regiment in 29 Palms, California. So for those that don't know, 29 Palms is out in the middle of the desert. I was told while I was there that the Army had condemned the base, and so they gave it over to the Marine Corps. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told. They have a big lake there. It's called Lake Bandini. It's where all the sewage of the installation goes. It's not a favorable destination for pretty much anybody in the military, but that was my first duty station. That's where I went right after SOI. Checking in, you're back to being, I mean, you're not a recruit, but you're back to being lower to shit. You know, you haven't seen anything, you haven't made any friends. You know, they don't treat you with the respect that they would, you know, a sergeant, obviously, or a corporal. You recognize that you're at the bottom of the totem pole. It was drilled into me during my entire, you know, early enlistment until I picked up E4. You know, they mess with you, you know, they trash you. I've heard stories about stuff that happens to other guys when they show up to their units. Maybe it's because I was in guns and I wasn't an 0311, I wasn't part of a line platoon, that I didn't experience a ton of that stuff. I experienced a little bit of it. Most of what I experienced was just PT. So we did stuff, we had 2 section leader corporals. They would take us by the numbers and have us run up the stairwells, you know, run around the barracks 4 or 5 times, run down the stairwells, nothing too significant. I was deployed to Okinawa as part of the UDP with my unit. At the time 9/11 happened in the States, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there in Okinawa, like really early. And I was, of course, sleeping at the time. And I remember my squad leader coming into my room and kicking my rack to wake me up. And I remember stirring awake, and my squad leader, he says, "They hit us. You know, we're under attack." And he says, "Come out to the ready room." So I run down to the ready room, and it's different now. Back then we had a really old TV inside of there. And when I say ready room, I mean a room where, you know, Marines can chill out. It's where you have your squad meetings, your platoon meetings. It's a big recreational room. Usually there's a pool table in there. There was a TV in there. And of course this was 2000. So it's not a nice digital TV, it's like a piece of shit, you know? Maybe 100 Marines in there, and they're all quiet, which was strange for that type of situation, because when you get that many Marines in confines like that, they're usually all talking, and it's usually pretty loud. So they're all quiet, they're all watching the TV. And so I walk up and I watch the TV, and you know, it's of these planes hitting the buildings. And I remember one of the Marines that I knew pretty well, you know, a younger guy, he turned around and he looked right at me and he said, "We're going to war." And he turned back around and kept watching the TV. And that was it. That's all he said. And that was like the only voice in the room. Things after that changed significantly for my military career. You know, they drove LAVs up to the front gates. We started doing patrols with Condition 3 weapons throughout the base. You know, they thought that we were going to get hit. Soon after that, we started the workup for the Middle East. So I had waited for years to get promoted to corporal, you know, something I really, really wanted. I remember getting promoted right when we were getting ready to go to Iraq. You know, it was maybe 3 months before we shipped out. They read my citation, they give me my rank, and then after everybody falls out, that's when you go through the actual real ceremony, right? So you have all the guys who are already corporals, all my buddies, all my friends who had already picked up corporal, come up and they give you your blood stripes. So they, you know, hit you in your leg, you know, with their knee and leave nice little bruise along the side to symbolize your blood stripes. And that was a really great experience for me, because it meant that I picked up more of a supervisory role. You know, as a corporal, as a non-commissioned officer in the Marines, you know, you're a leader now. And I had worked a long time to get there, and I was definitely happy about being able to lead these men, which was my squad. You know, I was given a squad at that time. I always wanted to assume that role. You know, I don't know what it was. I just thought I was ready, you know, to be in charge. You know, I knew what I was doing, and you train enough so that you kind of have to know what you're doing at that stage. I was ready to go, and I was ready to lead. Because remember, I joined a peacetime Marine Corps. You know, it became a wartime Marine Corps while I was in. I had always wanted to go to combat. You know, I didn't really know what it would be about on a personal level, but it's something that I wanted to do. I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids at the time, so I was ready to go, I was ready to do my job. You know, I'd been training for like 2.5, 3 years previously without being able to actually effectively do my job, because in infantry, your job is to close with and destroy the fucking enemy, right? I wanted to do that job. And so being able to finally do it, I was ecstatic about it. March of 2003, we're getting ready to do the invasion, right? And I have my squad, and we're in our AAV, and we pull up right close to the border, close to what's called the LOD, the line of departure. And all like maybe, you know, 10 miles into the horizon are all military vehicles behind my AAV. And what happened is we were attached to 3rd Platoon, Kilo Company, so we were the infantry support for the tanks, and the tanks were going to be the first ones through. So we were the infantry support for the M1 platoon that was going in. And the way they had it set up is a tank, a track, a tank, a track meaning an AAV, and that's how we were going to roll into the country. And so there were all these vehicles, and we were just sitting there waiting to go. And every once in a while, we'd get hit with gas, because Saddam was launching his rockets, you know, and they thought that they were filled with NBC, so biological weapons. Everyone was ready. I remember playing spades with my boys, you know, waiting to go over, and everyone was just itching to go. And so eventually we got the word, and we buttoned up, and we went through the LOD with the tanks and started moving in. For a good 16 hours, we were basically buttoned up in there. And that's because they were consistently scared that we were going to get hit with biological weapons, right, during that time. So they wouldn't let us open the hatches. MOP stands for Mission Oriented Protective Posture. So it's a NBC, a biological and chemical suit that you wear and you put over your utilities, right? And so you put the MOP suit on first, then you put your flak jacket, then you put your other gear. A mop suit is basically trousers, and then you wear plastic boots that go around your regular boots, and then you wear a tunic that goes over your regular jacket. So you're wearing, basically 3 to 4 layers of clothes, and then on top of those you have a flak jacket, and on top of that you have all your gear for combat. And then what they had to do is they had to cram all of us in this AAV, and we're moving into Iraq in spring. So it was not the most comfortable situation. While we were driving up from Kuwait across the line of departure, there was hours and hours where we'd all have to just be sitting there in the back of the AAV buttoned up. And guys would, including myself, would have to piss in water bottles and stuff because you couldn't get outside. Everyone was hot and miserable, fucking sandy. It was shitty. And then you got to move around and you got to fight in that stuff. The temperature was not like 120 degrees. It was not like so hot you could barely move, at least not for me. It was decent most of the time. It could have been really hot, and it just isn't registering for me because so much other stuff was going on at the time. But it wasn't unbearable. But it was always difficult to move around in mop. I always hated being mopped up. And so every once in a while, mostly at night, if my memory serves me correctly, you would hear the upgun system on the AAV, the 50 cal, the Mark 19, start barking to action, ba 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 ba. And the lieutenant would come back and he'd radio back and tell us, there was an Iraqi tank over there was this over there, but we didn't actually get to see it because we were moving fast. And I found out later the type of strategy that they were doing was just to move really quickly, right? And to kind of cut into the enemy's lines. So there would be a little bit of shooting and a little bit of action that, as infantry, we weren't privy to, at least initially. We moved in near Al-Basra, and at this time, they told us that we could do airborne security. And so the AAV has these big hatches on the top that you can open up. So I put my machine gun squad on the top. So it was myself, my machine gunner next to me, and then the A gunner next to him riding on top of this AAV. I mean, with our chest sticking out, so we called it airborne security. And we were kind of moving into the attack. Out in the distance, as we were driving along this road, gunner says, "Hey, Corporal, I see something." And I look over, to where he's talking about, and I see these really, really small shadows, maybe 300 meters away, moving around. And I look at the lieutenant, and the lieutenant is sticking out of the commander's copula, and he's like, "Well, shoot him." And so I was like, "Okay, well, let's shoot him." So I take my N16, I fire a few shots, and my gunner starts barking away with the 240. He doesn't hit either one of the shadows. And so I tell him to give me the machine gun, and I shoot at both of the shadows. While I'm doing that, we didn't have binoculars, but we had these little like spyglass things that they had issued us. And one of my team leaders was looking through the spyglass while I was shooting with the 240, and he said, "You got him." That's it. I didn't even see him. I couldn't even see them fall over, but he said, "Hey, Corporal, you got him. You got them both." And that was it. And it was like 300 meters away. My first combat action, didn't feel anything, no throwing up, didn't feel bad. It was so far away, it didn't seem like a big deal to me at all. Of course, later on, I would get in a little bit more action, which was way more significant than that. But that was the very first time that I had been told that my rounds ever made contact with anybody. So the next one was Basra. So we move up to Basra. The Brits relieved us in place and took over. We had a bunch of EPWs that just surrendered to us. As we were moving through the country, we went into Nasiriyah, al-Nasiriyah, and our task was to destroy an AA emplacement because we didn't want any of the Iraqi AAA to take out the helicopters and the jets that were bombing their positions. So basically what happens is that AA stopped on the outskirts of the city. The entire platoon just ran into this city. I mean, I guess that they thought that that was safe, but I really didn't have that much word. I didn't know a ton of what was going on because I was just a corporal. So apparently Brass decided it was a good idea to just run through the middle of the city and take out this anti-air gun. So we go up to this anti-air position, we put some C4 on it, we blow it up, and then we start running out of the city back to the AAV. While I'm running out of the city, this big, obviously American Westerner is waiting for me right next to the AAV as I'm approaching it. I have another Lance Corporal that I knew really well. He's on my left side running down the side of the street with me. This fat American is like backtracking with the camera as I'm running. And you know, it's in the middle of a combat zone. It seemed a little bit ridiculous, but the whole time he was taking pictures. And I didn't think much of it. And then after the whole war was over, my platoon sergeant came up to me and showed me Time magazine and opened it to the middle article and said, "Look at that, there you are." And that was me and my friend who I was running down the street with in Time magazine. Amazing. As a corporal, I don't get a huge amount of word, right? So I'm not told what the battle plan is. I'm not told exactly what's going on. It's kind of like, you know, your job is to fight, so we'll tell you what you need to know. That meant that when we got into certain fights, certain things happened, you know, I didn't see them coming. So the way that we rolled into Al-Qut, which was where we ran into a lot of resistance, was we had a tank in the front, a track behind it, a tank, a track, a tank. And as you roll into the city in Al-Qut, there's a big arch. And right when we drive past the arch, there's a palm grove on our right side and then buildings behind us. And there's this small building, right? Right next to the palm grove. And as we're driving into the palm grove, I remember a really sharp, like feeling, like pause, you know, where everything quiets down just a little bit for like a split second, right? That's what I felt as we were rolling in to Al-Qut. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, you hear the whoosh of RPGs. The tank in the rear tank gets hit, and then we also get hit. But what happened was they were Fedayeen Saddam guys. They were too close when they fired the RPG, so it didn't arm. It just bounced off the track. Remember, this time I'm still airborne security, so I'm on top of the AAV watching this all happen. So I look back after the tank behind us at the end of the column gets hit with the RPG, and then I look forward and the whole fucking palm grove like comes alive. The whole fucking palm grove. Muzzle flashes everywhere, and if anyone's ever been shot at, when you get shot at, it sounds like a snap next to your head, right? So I start hearing lots of fucking snaps, right? I'm still looking at the tank. The tank turns his fucking turret almost point blank to this house, and where the RPG, one of the RPGs came from, and he puts a main gun round into the second story of this house, and the entire fucking top of the house explodes in this gigantic, it's beautiful, just this gigantic explosion, right? Right after he does that, the ramp for our AAV comes down. And so we all, you know, get out of the AAV. Of course, we're taking fire. So as soon as we get out of the AAV, we lay down. And there's sidewalk, and you know how in a sidewalk, you know, there's that little ledge of concrete and then it goes to the asphalt on the road. We get down, you know, in that ledge, and rounds are still coming at us. And I notice a fighting position right in front of us. Like, and when I say right in front of me, I mean like 25 feet, 30 feet, like right in front of me, really close. And then the way that it's structured is it goes down into a gully and comes up again. So from the road, you know, so there's a road and it goes down in the palm grove. We're taking fire at the time, but we can't sit in the middle of the road, you know, while this thing is going on. And as I get up, I start moving down the little ledge, right? And as I'm moving, I'm saying, come on, come on, come on. A Fedayeen guy, the Fedayeen guy in front of me, brings his AK out of the fighting position like this over his head, and he lets off a full magazine, just like this, as I'm running down the backside of this hill, you know, to engage. And it shocks me so much when he does it that I kind of fall back like this, And there's another corporal, I'm not gonna use his real name, but let's call him Corporal Gill. So there's Corporal Gill, who's also on my right-hand side. And he says, he looks down at me, he says, "Are you hit?" Because he thought I got shot. What had happened is that guy came so close to hitting me, he put a round through my mop suit. If he had been maybe 3 inches to the left, he would have taken off my ankle, right? After he fired off his rounds, he went back down inside the hole to reload, right? And I looked up at Gil and I said, "No, I'm fine." And then I take my M16, and this is stuff that I had never been trained in ever, but I took it and I kind of lean it into the hole like this, and I fire about 4 rounds like that. And I was pretty sure that took care of it. I didn't look in the hole because, of course, I couldn't. We were still taking fire. And so we all get on this ledge right next to where that hole was. And the Lieutenant Stokes, he's still not satisfied. So he says, "Let's frag it." So I give him a frag grenade. He throws a frag grenade in there and cuts the guy in half. So half the guy's fucking body comes out of there and just fucking blows him out of the hole, right? So now he's real dead. The bravest thing that I've fucking seen in my life at this point happens. So Stokes, he gives me this look. He doesn't even say anything, right? He just gives me this look. While we're taking fire, just after that grenade went off, he gets up and with his radio operator, he runs into the fight right in front of me. And it's the bravest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And we all see our lieutenant doing this. And so we all get up and just follow him into the fight. When the grenade went off, it shot like pieces of this guy into the atmosphere, right? So as I was running, like his shit was like showering us. I got some of like his blood and shit on me and like in my mouth and stuff. So I had a little bit of issues with that afterwards. But yeah, that was pretty fucking bad. We ran into the palm grove after the lieutenant because the tanks were raking the palm grove with coax and stuff, and we were shooting too. And so by the time that we did that, there were only maybe 3 positions left. We got real up close to those guys. So, and something I left out is that they told us to fix bayonets when we were moving into Koot. So everyone had fixed bayonets. And that's how we knew that we were in for something. They shot a small rocket into this one position, and it was so fucking close. Like, I'd never seen a small fire that close to anything, but that like took out the main threat. In that battle right there, we had our first KIA, we had our first wounded in action. Some other stuff could have happened at different parts of the battalion I didn't hear about, but to my knowledge, that was our first KIA, and that was Corporal Mark Eugenios. He died in that fight. I think I was confused. I thought that I should feel differently, right? Because I had read a whole bunch of books before, we went into that situation. I felt like, I should be sick. I should, be crying. I should be throwing up. But I didn't do any of those things. And looking back on it, I think it was because I was just doing my job, right? I mean, that's the job you get trained to do. That's the job that I trained to do that I wanted to do for years, right? I mean, I wanted to have that experience in my life. I'm not saying this because, it's some, I'm some warmonger or something, or I just did my job, and so that's why I didn't have a huge problem with it. It sucks that it had to happen. The guy was trying to kill me. All those guys were trying to kill us. So, I mean, there was that was the only response we could really have. I accepted before I even left to cross the line of departure that I could die. And that goes back to the fact that, the time that I went through this experience, I was a young kid. The time that I was in Iraq, I was 21. So, I mean, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids, I didn't have, this huge network of people, and so I felt confident that I could do my job without people being too devastated at my loss. After Al Koot, we're driving along the road, and eventually we get on the outskirts of Baghdad. On the outskirts of Baghdad, there's a university. I call it Baghdad University. I really didn't see a title. I've been told that it's Baghdad University. That's the name of the school. But anyway, so we pull up to this university, and it is pristine. It's beautiful. Wasn't bombed. Looks great, like they had just manicured the lawns, and it looks great. Our AAV moves up and puts a hole in the outside wall around the exterior of the university. And then we just are told to just sit there and wait. What I didn't know at the time was about a quarter mile away was a huge Republican Guard battalion that had set up, defenses and all kinds of stuff. I didn't know that at the time. What had happened is I was just sitting there, just kind of waiting to get further orders to find out where we were going, not really understanding why we had gotten out of the AAV in the first place. And all of a sudden I see these two guys in black pajamas with AKs running across my field of vision. No one else saw these guys, right? Everyone was smoking and joking, eating MREs, and I just saw these two fucking guys with rifles. And so I didn't even think about it, right? And this still gets me to this day. Like, I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't say anything. I just raised my rifle up and just start shooting at them. Boom, 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 boom. And I hit one of them. The first guy fell. The other guy realizes that I'm shooting at him, and he brings his rifle up, and I fire maybe 4 or 5 rounds into that guy, drop him too. So now, after my rounds have been fired, the whole world explodes, right? So they're like, oh shit, everybody's screaming. I yell at my machine gunner, make sure they're down. So he takes the machine gun and he puts, about 100 rounds into each of them. And then the AAV is like, where is it? Where's the target? Tell us where this is coming from, where the guys are. And so I motion that way where I thought they'd come from. And so the AAV turns up gun system and fires Mark 19 and 50 cal into this small generator building and just fucking devastates it, right? And so after that's over and we think the threat is done, we walk around, and where they had come from is they had built a little cave section, a portion of the wall where they had a huge stockpile of RPGs and machine guns and all kinds of stuff in there. And these two guys were doing a recon to see, they had no idea that we were there because we had been moving so quickly. So they didn't know that, this entire fucking platoon and tanks and AVs were 25 feet away when they came out of their hiding spot, and I just happened to see them. That situation was a little bit harder for me because it wasn't a community situation. So the guy in the fighting position, I had shot him, right? But I didn't witness where my shots went, right? He was inside the hole. I didn't see my round's impact. And then the lieutenant threw the grenade. Could have been the grenade, could have been my rounds, who the fuck knows? The two guys at the Baghdad University, there was no one else was shooting. There was no fucking question that I had killed both those guys with my rifle. So that was a little bit harder for me. It's still a little bit harder for me. And also their condition, because like I said, we put a belt of 7.62 into both of them. So they were real fucked up. A top of one of the guys' heads had come off. They were bad. And so it wasn't pretty. And so I still think about those guys. We looked for intel on both of them, after they were dead. And one of the guys had a picture of his girlfriend. And he had a Republican Guard ID, which looked a lot like my ID. He looked a lot like me, just, an Iraqi. And he was close to my age, older than me at the time, but, way younger than I am now. It just kind of hit me, it could have been me. I could have been this guy, I at the time I had a girlfriend, his ID looks kind of like mine. It still kind of gets me, After I was done with combat, I read a book that's called On Killing by Colonel Grossman. A lot of the killing that takes place, especially in Iraq, is mechanical, right? So you're looking through a sight. So Apache, you see all the videos from the Apache with the IR scopes. It's kind of like a video game, right? So there's a detachment. In that situation at the school, at the university, there was no detachment, right? I looked through my iron sights. I didn't even have a fucking scope on my A2, and I took them out and I pulled the trigger. So as far as levels of responsibility, that would be the most severe one. Besides actually using a knife or a rock or melee. So that was the worst experience as far as having to do my job in Iraq for me, that I still kind of think about sometimes. Started moving up to Baghdad. What I remember about on the push to Baghdad when we were first entering it, there were a lot of civilian casualties when we were moving through Iraq. I didn't witness a ton of them. I heard about most of them. I did witness one incident. As we were moving in to the capital city, it looked like a vehicle had been hit with a main gun round from a tank, and just a civilian car. It was a blue sedan, right? And there were people all over the fucking road. And who knows who shot it, right? It could have been the Iraqis. I didn't witness who shot the car, right? But anyway, it looked like it'd been hit by a main gun round. There was a female, and she looked to be about 45, and her whole face was covered with blood. She'd obviously been injured. And I remember her just reaching up at the AAV, yelling at me. And I was still airborne security at the time, right? I was myself and the guys in my squad were the only ones who were airborne security the whole war, right? So I got a front row seat to everything that was going on outside. And I still remember her too. The memories are seared in your brain, from something like that. I just remember feeling helpless, And there was another time, the first sergeant in the 88, and the 88 is a tank recovery vehicle they use to fix the M1s. He came driving up to our track and he said, "Hey, you tell the lieutenant," and he pointed over at a 50 cal Humvee. And he said, "Hey, this guy just waxed 10 surrendering Republican Guard guys. You need to tell your lieutenant about that." And I told the lieutenant, right? I was like, "Hey, the first sergeant wants you to know that this fucking guy shot some guys he wasn't supposed to." And as we're driving past this guy, he looked like he had taken charcoal and he put it in his eyes, right? So his eyes looked all sunken in. He looked like a skeleton. And he said, "I do it again, and I do it again." He yelled at me as we drove by. You don't have to put that in. You can edit that out. That was fucking crazy, man. I didn't see that. But the first sergeant told me it happened and told me to report it to the lieutenant, which I did. But that guy was he didn't give a fuck at all, right? It was crazy. That guy was crazy. The first sergeant drove away. I told my lieutenant was inside the track. But he heard me because like I said, I was airborne security, so I was on top of the track. So he heard me yelling down to the lieutenant. And I looked back at him as we drive by him, and he says, "And I do it again." The lieutenant didn't hear him because he was inside the track. They would pretend like they were experiencing, and this is why I don't necessarily fault them too much, is that they would pretend like they were surrendering sometimes. And then when you would get close to them, they'd have their AKs behind their back or something, and they just pull out their weapon and just gun them down, right? And so we were actually, while we were driving to Baghdad, we were told about that and to look out for that. And then we rolled into Baghdad. Palestine Squares is where the big statue of Saddam was, right? So it was the tank unit that we were stationed with who pulled that down. It wasn't very eventful, but it was a pretty good feeling, to pull the Saddam statue down. All the Iraqis were cheering. I remember that there was a little Iraqi girl who was putting flowers in our flak jacket. That was pretty cool. And so, we had figured that the war was over. We got stationed on a small building in the square next to a mosque. So it was myself, my 2 machine gunners, and the assistant gunners. We thought the war was over. So, we were all good. We were smoking and joking, still trying to stay vigilant, had one guy on watch, but everything seemed good to go. And then as it started to get dark outside, I'm sitting in a chair, leaning back, smoking a cigarette. And there were only a few times in Iraq when I legitimately thought I was going to die. This is one of those times, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm smoking a cigarette, and I feel and hear the snap next to my head, and I feel a fucking round go right by my head, maybe 2 or 3 inches, right? And like I said, I was smoking and joking in a plastic chair, the ones that you can lean back on. When that happened, the fucking legs kicked out from the chair and I just collapsed. All of the fucking guys on top of the building with me were like, "Where the fuck did that come from?" sniper, sniper, sniper. Everyone starts yelling. And I didn't know where it came from, but I took a wild guess and I said, at the top of that building right there, my machine gunner takes the gun and he saddles it right here in his hip, and he just lets go on the top of the building with about 200 rounds. Bah, 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 just at the top of the building. We don't have another round. No one else shoots at us. It was just that one shot. And I look at that now as kind of a foretelling of things to come, right? Because we were all kind of told that the war was over. Like, there's no more combat action that's gonna happen. It's done. We won, right? And then the night after believing that, after being told that, I almost lose my fucking head from a sniper, right? And then, of course, the insurgency over the next, 20 years, would kick off and be this huge deal. But I just think that's significant. When we were moving into Baghdad, they had called, and I don't know this for sure, but I had been told that one of our officers had made a shitty fire mission and had called for fire on the wrong place. I had some rounds hit real close to me. Actually, one of our tracks got hit, and we had some KIA from the incoming, artillery. Everything else, I felt like I was in danger, but, I didn't have the pucker factor. I remember playing a lot of spades with my squad. It was like it doesn't seem like it would be, but it was like a team building exercise. You really get to know somebody when you play cards with them. We never played for any money or anything like that. It was just kind of to pass the time, but we never fought each other because of a spade game, but there was lots of animosity, right? And you're not playing for money, right? So it's just like a rivalry between you and, other Marines, really. That building in Palestine Square that we were stationed above, there was a guy underneath it. His name was Shumki. He told us his name, and he gave us a plate full of shredded chicken, the very first night that we were there. And it was amazing. And of course, all of us thought that there was something wrong with it. Maybe he was trying to poison it, or, we didn't know what his allegiance was. But, for the past months and months, all we'd been eating were MREs, because we were in combat. So that chicken was awesome. It was so good. We all ate it. It was a horrible idea to do that, but it was still delicious. When I got back, as soon as I got back, I got put in a room at 3-7, because they moved my unit because I was getting out of the Marine Corps, with Corporal Jason Dunham. Jason was a great guy. I went out drinking with him, plenty of occasions. Some guys you just know are going to win medals, right? Jason was one of those guys. He came from 8th and I. He looked the part of a Marine. He's big guy, worked out all the time, was a PT, very good at PT, much better than I was at the time. I have fond memories of going out with that guy. He was awarded the first Medal of Honor in Iraq. He jumped on a grenade, saved the lives of a bunch of Marines, and was KIA over there. So a real good guy. He was a little bit more quiet, reserved type of guy. He was a confident Marine. A lot of the guys from 8th and I were like that. Dunham really personified that. Sorry he's gone. I knew that guy was going to be successful. He just looked like a hero, and he was a hero. When you go in the Marine Corps, especially at the age that I did, your friends, they're still living their lives. What happened for me is a lot of them expect you to be the same kind of person returning that you were when you left. They threw this party for me where they invited a bunch of their friends, a bunch of people my age, but they were all civilians. I was one of the first combat veterans to rotate back to the States. My unit was, because we got back so soon after the war had concluded. And so I went to this party. They asked me, tell us about what happened over there. Tell us about a war. Tell us about a battle that you fought in. And so I made the mistake of telling them about the ambush that I was in Al-Quds. And I went into detail. I don't think I realized that I wasn't talking to Marines. I was talking to civilians who had never, probably even fired a weapon in their life. My story was too much for some of them. Some of them, maybe half the party after I told that story, got up and just walked out. And my friends looked at me completely differently after I told that story. And I recognized then, as I still do, that, you have been through an experience that no one else has been through, being in the military, being a combat veteran. And so, for you, it's just your story, right? It doesn't seem strange to you to recount these things that happened because you lived it. For other people who haven't actually been through that, it could be shocking because it's so far removed from the type of lifestyles that we live, in this country, especially young people, especially these days, are removed from that, haven't had to do anything like that. And so hearing about that is not good. And this is where, I really want to steer people to try and do this, steer other veterans to do this themselves, right? Is that, before I got out, I had a mission of what I was going to do with my life. And I took those things that I had learned in the military, the discipline, being 15 minutes early, have a plan, have an objective. I took that stuff, for sure going to apply it to my life after the military. And that's what I tried to do. And so my transition was different than most, is because I had an objective. I was going to go to law school. That was my objective. That was a mission that I gave myself. And so in order to reach that objective, I couldn't be influenced either by anyone else or by my own mind to stray too far from that objective. And as long as I always kept that at the forefront of my mind, I was able to succeed. It's just something that I kind of want to impart to other veterans, is you have these skills, you can be awesome, you can rule your own life when you get out of the military. You just have to be able to know how to channel what you've learned to be able to accomplish it. And that's all I really did. And I had issues like everybody else, some of the stuff that you have to do over there, while it's not wrong, it's part of your job, it still does affect you, right? So, there was a lot of drinking when I got out, I did a lot of partying, but I didn't do it to the degree that it subtracted or, lessened my pursuit of the mission. The way that I looked at it is like secondary objectives, or primary objectives that I need to accomplish to get to the main goal, right? So I had to get housing, right? Yeah, on a very basic level, right? You got to get housing, you got to be able to eat, you got to be able to drive to your classes, you have to enroll in school, you have to figure out how to pay for it, right? So each of these small objectives to accomplish the one primary objective, which is getting your associates, getting your bachelor's, getting your Juris Doctorate, right? And as long as you plan it out, and apply yourself and use the discipline that you've already been given, to accomplish those things, you can do it. My major was always political science. So for me, it was, I like to debate, right, politics. So for me, it was entertaining, because I always was a part of the educational thing. I never got into a fraternity. I never applied to be in a fraternity. I wasn't a part of some huge party situation. I stayed away from the Greek life, primarily because I knew that if I got too involved in that stuff, I wouldn't finish school. I just party all the time. So I tried to stay away from it, because it would get in the way of my main objective. I like to debate politics. I like to talk about that stuff. And all of my educational stuff is structured to talk about political issues. I graduated with a political science degree, cum laude, with honors. So the only reason any of that would impact me, the fact that they were younger than me, hadn't been through what I had been through, it would just help me in my arguments, right? Because I could pull on personal experience. I didn't really mind it, because I accepted the fact that I had done something no one else had done in any of my classes, right? And as long as I kept that at the forefront of my mind, it was easier to work with other people and kind of understand them. I became a lawyer when I was still working for the federal government as a federal civilian. I was a police officer, and I did, maybe 2 years of my own thing before I went out on my own and really just did the law specifically without a second federal job. you can do it, and again, it's just establishing another objective for yourself and moving towards the objective. That's all it was. I have a family law practice. I do general civil matters as well. As part of my transition, I kind of wanted to chase the action. I don't want to say I missed combat, but I missed having the intensity, the adrenaline of being in those type of situations, right? And so I seeked out jobs that would maybe give me some of those same type of situations while I was going to school, right? And while I was seeking out these jobs, I intentionally chose schools that would give me more of that experience. I went to SWAT school in Central Florida. I went to a PSD operator course by a bunch of guys who trained as special forces guys. I took an NRA law enforcement firearm instructor course. I became certified. Like all of these schools, these police schools that I took were, in pursuit of that, adrenaline, of that rush. And none of them would ever give me the same thing that combat did, right? And I figured that out after, taking these schools for years and years, that you cannot replicate that ever, without being in it. Whether you served in combat or not, it totally does not matter. You still served in the military, and it also doesn't matter whether you served during a time of war or not, because you were standing there on the line. You were pledged yourself and you dedicated yourself to the country. And I think just signing up and just doing your job, regardless of whether you were a cook, whether you were admin, it doesn't really matter. You were still doing something for the country. And I think that's noble. I think you should be proud of it. And I think you should talk about it a lot, because a lot of people won't do that. And, we see now the recruiting numbers are having a lot of issues, finding people. Dedicating yourself to something greater than yourself is a selfless act in and of itself. So I don't think there's any reason to be ashamed, of your service. If you served, you served, and you should be happy about it. I'm on Instagram, Single Dad Attorney. If anybody wants to hit me up, ask me any questions. Not a plug for my business, but I will help you out, whatever it is, and good luck.